And, people who've been following this for a long time just could see, the negative things in advance. And there's certainly been a lot.
One of the OGs from literally in my parents' house back in episode 134.
Back in the day, and I couldn't look forward to it more. It's always great to be back here. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for always doing it. And we obviously got you at a time. I've had to keep my mouth shut about this for 2.5 years, but the book is now coming out, The Jackal. We'll be talking about that today. Obviously, I'm excited to read this. I know exactly who the person you're writing on is, though, and the access you got, and I just want to hear all about that today. But, you've also been down, basically, as far as I know, hunkered in writing this, especially over the last couple of years, where you've also been the guy that's been for 30, 35 years covering a lot of national security around the world and being on the scenes in so many of these places. We've done a lot of past episodes where you were literally returning from places in the Middle East and having covered it on the ground. So while I know you haven't been as directly like on the ground with sources, so to speak, over the last couple of years, there's no doubt that you've been watching what's going on, and there are some things that you've called. And I do have to say, before we get into it, I've always appreciated just how balanced you are, how calm and like just almost like lecture education about it you are, rather than injecting always like a bunch of opinions into it, because these are hard topics. Obviously, the Middle East, where you spend a lot of time, is pretty crazy. But I knew you before I knew John Kiriakou, and then when I got to know him, he was a huge fan of your work as well, which I think was pretty cool. But it's amazing how you've had sources in Arab intelligence, U.S. intelligence, Israeli intelligence, European intelligence over the years, and have been able to cover all of it. So actually, before I even ask you about the Iran war, have you ever thought about like how wild the last 30 years of your life has been?
It's so funny because so much of it, everything is I think in a way accidental. You can have the best plan and then life throws things at you. And I was an investigative reporter working on national security, well, not national security subjects, but health and environmental subjects, nuclear safety and all kinds of, food safety. And then 9/11 happened. And it completely changed my world and pretty much everybody around me at the time. Everybody has to be covering this profound event that happened to America, and we all had a piece of that. And I got into the subjects, and I felt like I was pretty good at trying to explain. And that's, for journalists, it's not just the reporting, but sometimes can you help people understand what's going on in a way that really makes sense? And then can you develop the sources, people who really know what's going on, who can get deeply into the subjects and interpret. And it was the most fascinating subject I've ever, covered. And before I know it, I'm covering the CIA. I'm a diplomatic reporter and roaming around the Middle East, and then books come out of it. And it was transformative. And I must say, it all kind of started 9/11 for me.
Yeah, there's so many people I talk to from all different realms of lines of work around the world who, I'm thinking especially journalists and military, who were all in different places doing different things, sometimes within those two sectors at that time. And that's always like the crux. That's the turning point day where like their career was doing this and then it did that. So it's always wild to hear that.
The day the world changed. Yeah.
Now you were here back in, I believe, episode 261 with me. That was the last time. So that would have been December 2024. I think Syria had just fallen.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
We were all just in total astonishment by that. Yeah. I recall that.
Yeah. Now we can talk about that today too, and where that's all at. But one of the things we did talk about in there, and we talked about it before, was Iran. And that whole, like, it always just kind of felt like a brewing kettle, like something was going to happen. And lo and behold, about 6 months after you were here, 7 months after you were here, there was the first Operation Midnight Hammer, 12-day war. And then you get to, obviously, the war going on this year. So the first question, did you see this coming with the idea that we could be talking about boots on the ground there?
I did not, because one reason I didn't is because I've been, deep in this world for long enough that I understood the reluctance of American military officials particularly, but also intelligence. So the idea of trying to become militarily involved in regime change in Iran was so fraught. It's so complicated. So many things could go wrong. It was just not a good idea to go there. Mm-hmm. And so it was only really just in the current Trump administration where it seems to be a consensus was formed that, well, we're just going to do the drastic. We're going to eliminate the regime through military force, and we're going to sort of decapitate the state, and everything's going to be great in the Middle East for the first time. All the terrorism will stop, and it's almost like George W. Bush-like in the sense that we're going to invade Iraq and everything's going to be wonderful after that. We're going to transform the world because of this bold action. And, people who've been following this for a long time just could see, the negative things in advance. And there's certainly been a lot. It would have been great if they pulled it off, that they managed to kind of put a democracy in Tehran. But the chances that was going to happen, given the players there, given how deeply entrenched they are and how committed they are to governing the place, it was not going to end well. It's hard to predict where things will go, but I feel like we're in a mess for a long time. This is not going to be easily resolved.
When you say a mess for a long time, are you more leaning towards we're going to have to feel like we're still forced to be there and involved in the war for a long time, or because we've already done so much damage, it may wind down here at some point, but that damage is going to take years to be undone?
Yeah, I think there's some of both, but I do feel like I feel like I think the administration has decided that it can't put boots on the ground. It's just politically untenable. And so the options that you're left with are pretty bad, but basically what you put in place is a terrible stalemate that we just have to live with, and that creates its own instability, which creates higher prices, but also destabilizes regional governments. It's a pathway to terrorism, and we can talk about that some. The Iranians are really good at sort of seeding terrorist attacks, helping groups get in place and do bad things. So I just feel like we're still at an early stage of this. And as you kind of try to look down the horizon, there's opportunity for things to get worse instead of better. And in my view, it's more likely to head in that direction.
Yeah. Now, I mean, you've seen so many places in the Middle East over the years where, to some extent or to a strong extent, we tried to do the whole, we're going to bring democracy here and spread it. And then you realize a lot of them are collegiate cultures, and you'd love to see free governments and stuff, and you certainly would not like to see oppression of people from their governments, but I kind of don't see a lot of data that we're very good at spreading democracy. Am I a little fucked up there? Or?
No, like Exhibit A, Afghanistan. I mean, that was not only were we going to sort of get rid of Al-Qaeda, which is the reason we went in, but we were going to change the government there. We're going to create a society that women could thrive in. All very good ambitions. And where are we now? We've got Taliban in control. Things are just as bad, if not worse than ever. Sanctuaries exist there for some pretty bad groups. So that's A, but you can kind of almost go down the list. Iraq is an interesting example now because the government that exists there now is a little bit more, not quite as oppressive as some of the ones that existed in, 10, 15 years ago. But it's still, it hasn't been a success by any stretch of the imagination. Instead, what it's been is kind of a nightmare of a drain on our government, on our military, the sort of the price of, long-term health care for veterans just going to continue to, build for decades to come. It's hard if you kind of could roll back the tape and say, should we do this or not? Yeah, I can't think of a single argument that says, let's plunge in and do this, because it never, ever works out like you think it's going to.
So what made them think this time was going to be the charm?
I honestly do think that this was a case of Netanyahu whispering in Trump's ear. And I don't think there's anything particularly controversial about saying that, because Trump had his own, ideas about how he was going to bring the Iranians around, and it didn't work out. I mean, there was a nuclear deal in 2015 that kind of bottled up Iran's nuclear program. It had its flaws and weaknesses, and it was going to, so the terms were going to expire relatively soon. So there were flaws, but it did kind of keep things quiet on the nuclear front for a while. And Trump's idea when he came in the first time was, well, we're going to scrap that. And, that was a terrible idea. So we're just going to get rid of it. And the outcome was that just things on the nuclear case just got much, much worse. Right. And Iran became much closer to building a nuclear bomb. But I think in this particular case, the more hawkish side of the Israeli government has always believed that what needed to happen was some really aggressive U.S. Israeli operation, some military strike that was going to eliminate this Iran problem once and for all. The nuclear file, the terrorism part of it, get rid of the bad government, the IRGC, and all the other bad actors. Let's just do it quickly, pull the Band-Aid, and everything's going to be great after that. And I think Trump was literally just talked into it. He thought it sounded great to him. He could come out of it looking like a hero. And who would have thought that you could actually kill the supreme leader, wipe out most of his senior staff, and Iran just keeps going. And if anything, the leadership now is more entrenched and more hardline than the one that existed before. So, and actually, the idea of an Iranian bomb, even though they've lost a lot of capability, the new guys are more sort of warmed up to the idea, much more than say the last Ayatollah was, who I was a bit afraid of kind of crossing that line and becoming a nuclear state. These new guys, if they could get a nuclear weapon, they would. I'm pretty sure of it.
Thank you guys for watching the episode. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. They're both a huge, huge help. And if you would like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below.